Our top focus story on the broadcast is India walking out of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meet. This was a virtual meet of the national security advisors of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization countries. Remember, India and Pakistan too are now part of the SCO. And as soon as National Security Advisor Ajit Doval saw a flawed map of Pakistan, a map of Pakistan that shows Jammu and Kashmir as part of Pakistan, India was very miffed about it. The National Security Advisor made this point to the hosts, to the Russians, and said this is completely unacceptable to India. Pakistan continued with its fake propaganda on Kashmir, which India found unacceptable, and India has walked out of the SCO-NSA meet. Of course, Russia said that they weren't happy about this, about Pakistan's actions. No bilateral issues are to be discussed at this multilateral forum, but India-Russia relations remain on an even keel. Pakistan continues with its antics. Remember, it's because of Pakistan's state-sponsored terror that SAARC is virtually on the back burner. SAARC isn't functioning because of Pakistan's continuation with terror. But clearly, we'll get you more on that story. But for the moment, I want to quickly focus on our top story. And this is Union Defence Minister Rajnath Singh telling the country in Lok Sabha the ground realities here in Ladakh. He said India wants peace but is prepared for any eventuality. He gave details about how China has violated every agreement on border, whether it's 1993, 1996, and there is a big difference in what China says and what China does on ground.
बीते समय में भी चीन के साथ हमारे बॉर्डर एरियाज में लंबे स्टैंड ऑफ की स्थिति ये कई बार बनी है, जिसका शांतिपूर्ण तरीके से समाधान भी किया गया था। फिर भी हम मौजूदा स्थिति के शांतिपूर्ण समाधान के लिए पूरी तरह से कमिटेड हैं। इसके साथ साथ मैं सदन को आश्वस्त करना चाहता हूं कि हम सभी परिस्थितियों से निपटने के लिए भी तैयार हैं।
Defence Minister Rajnath Singh spells out India's resolve in no uncertain terms in the government's first statement on the Ladakh face-off in Parliament. It comes even as China is amassing troops in eastern Ladakh, an indication the standoff might not end anytime soon. The minister said China was constantly trying to change the status quo along the LAC, and every bid has been foiled by the Indian forces.
मई महीने के मध्य में चाइना द्वारा वेस्टर्न सेक्टर में कई स्थानों पर LAC पर ट्रांसग्रेशन करने की कोशिश की गई। इसमें कोंकाला, गोगरा एंड पेंगोंग लेक का नॉर्थ बैंक शामिल है। इन कोशिशों को हमारी सेनाओं ने समय पर देख लिया तथा उसके लिए आवश्यक जवाबी कार्रवाई भी की है। हमारे उसके बारे में
Rajnath Singh in his statement made three key points. The Chinese created a violent face-off on June 15th in Galwan. Our soldiers laid down their lives, protecting our land, and inflicted heavy costs on the Chinese side. There are many friction points in eastern Ladakh, including Gogra, Konkla and Pangong Lakes north and south banks.
हमें सदन के अंदर नहीं बोलने दिया। हम जानते हैं ये सरकार डरते हैं, अगर कांग्रेस कोई सवाल पूछ दे, पूछने से जवाब तो नहीं है, क्या कहेंगे? प्रधानमंत्री जी क्यों आज नदारत रहे जब इतने बड़े रेजोल्यूशन उन्हीं की सरकार ला रहे हैं, वो भी हिंदुस्तान की पार्लियामेंट में, क्योंकि उनका डर है।
And in his meeting with the Chinese Defence Minister, Rajnath Singh clearly stated, while India has a responsible approach towards border management, it is determined to protect its sovereignty and territorial integrity. The Defence Minister's statement, however, did not satisfy the opposition. The Congress, which has been pressing for a discussion on the LAC standoff, walked out questioning Prime Minister Narendra Modi's absence from Parliament.
यहाँ पर पॉलिटिकल लीडरशिप की सरासर नाकामी है और मोदी सरकार की के ही वजह से जो 20 हमारे बहादुर सिपाहियों की मौत हुई, उसका जिम्मेदार मोदी सरकार है। और आज जितने भी हालात वहां पर हो रहे हैं कि क्या हम 1000 स्क्वायर किलोमीटर पर जो हम पेट्रोलिंग करते थे, आज वो हम नहीं कर सक रहे पेट्रोलिंग।
It was a tightrope walk for the centre. A strong worded statement lauding the brave Jawans at LAC, yet making sure the window of dialogue with the Chinese remains open. But the Congress party, dismayed at being disallowed the opportunity to ask questions. Although a disoriented opposition made the day easier for the Treasury benches. With camera person Ravi Kant, this is Anand Patel in New Delhi for India Today.
India Today's editor defense Abhishek Bhalla joins you on the broadcast. Also with me is Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma. He's commanded the Leh Corps, understands the lay of the land and the current situation very well. But before I come to my guests, I want you to take a look at this report. Remember, it's already winter's approaching. As of now, it's about 7 degrees Celsius here at Leh, already sub-zero at the line of actual control in the higher reaches. Very soon, within a month, it's going to start snowing in the higher reaches. So for the Army and the Indian Air Force, it's a race against time to ensure essential supplies reach our forces on time. Whether it's food, fuel, ammunition, all of that. It's a race against time. And Abhishek Bhalla reports on how this logistics nightmare for some, but streamlined for the Indian Armed Forces, is happening on ground zero.
With India and China standing eyeball to eyeball in Ladakh, the Indian Army is preparing for the long haul. Forces are stocking up essentials in advance for troops deployed on the front lines. India Today got exclusive access to the Leh Air Base, where this huge C-17 Globemaster III is dropping off supplies for troops.
What we are witnessing right now is an extremely important operation that is taking place to ensure that troops deployed in forward areas where there is friction over the last 4 months between the Indian and the Chinese armies keep getting a steady supply of all important material, be it ration, be it medicine, be it gear that will sustain them even in the peak harsh winter at heights more than 15,000 feet.
The Indian Army is deployed in the world's most hostile border region along the line of actual control. These are inhospitable terrains and the temperatures drop to as low as minus 40 degrees Celsius in winter. Which is why the troops need warm clothing, Arctic tents and heating devices to sustain while guarding our borders.
These are all the essential items that have just been transported, airdropped. Very important, what we can see here are Arctic tents. Look at this. It says Arctic tents. These are special tents meant for the troops in high altitude areas, in the forward locations. These are locations at more than 15,000 feet. Winter is approaching. It's very important for the troops to have all gear and equipment that will allow them to sustain. What we can also see here is these are portable kerosene heaters, again extremely important for sustaining the peak winter.
It isn't just this C-17 Globemaster. The all-powerful Chinooks of the Indian Air Force are also involved in logistics operations to the front lines. The Indian Air Force is assisting the Army to ensure troops face no shortage in the upcoming winter.
That's the inside of the helicopter Chinook. I'll just get inside and give you a very clear look of how the material has been brought in. Again, big cartons of all essential items required, especially during the winter. A very clear look, and all of this will be loaded in some time. The Fire and Fury Corps is the only formation of the Indian Army which is entirely deployed in high altitude areas north of the Great Himalayan Range. We pride ourselves as being the prima donna for war fighting in high altitude area. The Indian Air Force plays a pivotal role here and has tremendously assisted in the speedy induction of troops over the past few months.
The synergy between the Indian Army and the Indian Air Force is exemplified by the quick mobility of men and material in these mountainous terrain, and the follow-up with the commodities, essential commodities and food supplies for the sustenance of the soldiers in forward areas.
It's not just essentials and other equipment, fuel is also being stocked up. Oil companies are supplying fuel to the Indian Army for uninterrupted movement of their vehicles and armory. Ladakh is on edge. Sorties by fighters like these Sukhois have become a common sight. The message to China is clear. India wants peace, but is battle ready. There will be no compromise on India's territorial integrity.
There is heightened air activity in Ladakh over the last few days, be it fighter jets of the Indian Air Force carrying out air combat patrols or transport aircraft carrying crucial logistics to the forward areas. There is complete synergy between the Indian Army and the Indian Air Force to make sure troops deployed in forward areas are battle ready at all times. With camera person Satya, Abhishek Bhalla in Ladakh for India Today.
General Rakesh Sharma, you heard what Defence Minister Rajnath Singh said on the floor of the House. You're watching the logistics build up along the line of actual control. Your appreciation, sir, what will happen in the days and weeks to come? Are we headed for conflict with China?
Good evening, Gaurav. It's good seeing you in Leh. Let me put it in perspective that today's speech by the Honorable Raksha Mantri was a first in many kinds. He was forthright, he was candid, and he did not soft pedal issues. And I have three major takeaways from this speech, which I think are most relevant. The first is that he mentioned that there has been non-delineation of LAC, and that is by history the most foundational issue. You know, we have been soft pedaling this issue and not talking about it and hiding it in diplomatics, and that the Chinese have not pursuing the issue of clarification of the LAC at all over history. That's a very important issue placed in perspective today by the Raksha Mantri.
Yes.
The second one is that he clearly recognized that there is a crisis in hand, and he also mentioned that this is a very difficult situation, which is actually an acceptance of fact, and that the Chinese have also unilaterally tried to alter the status quo, which is also a fact, and it is recognition, which is a very important issue. And the third, and which I find most critical, is that he mentioned that there is a total disregard by the Chinese of all bilateral agreements. Now that puts the entire situation in a perspective of what has happened in the course of 4 months and tells us where the things will proceed hereinafter.
Absolutely. This is Tinderbox, Eastern Ladakh. Could it also be Tinderbox? Other parts of the line of actual control, whether middle sector Barahoti in North Sikkim or in Arunachal Pradesh. But Abhishek, the forces, they hope for the best, but they prepare for the worst. And that is what you witnessed on ground. But Abhishek, the worst in terms of winter. One enemy is China. One enemy is the hostile environment. Minus 50 degrees. 18,000 feet altitude. How well prepared are we, Abhishek?
Gaurav, there were always concerns about whether the Indian forces will be fully geared up for the harsh winter when temperatures can drop to minus 40, minus 50 degrees at those heights beyond 15,000 feet. But what I have witnessed, spoken to a lot of people, the last few days there has been a massive stocking exercise. Now this stocking includes keeping in reserves not just food but also fuel, most importantly winter gear. The troops have been provided with some of the best tents that can accommodate troops at those heights and sustain in dipping temperatures. Other than this, there is also a constant supply of all material that is needed at those heights, and the Indian Army and the Indian forces are trying to make sure that this ends before the winter sets in, before the roads get blocked because of the snow. And a massive exercise is being carried out by the Indian Army as well as the Indian Air Force.
Oh, absolutely, Abhishek. General, I was in Depsang and DBO just last month. Murgo is called the gateway of hell. Given those altitudes in DBO, it's a huge, vast, high altitude desert. So are we saying that we will have massive forces, a brigade plus in some areas, deployed through the winters with all their equipment, whether tanks, artillery, armor, mechanized forces all along? And is it as tough for China?
Okay, thank you, Gaurav, once again. Of all these things that Abhishek has been talking about, 60% of the stuff that is moved is actually fuel, because you have to keep this large quantum of people who are there warm. The fuel for warming purpose actually becomes the critical part of it. And also these large vehicles that you have, the tanks, etc., have to be kept warm. So they have to be started at regular intervals, so you keep the tanks warm, otherwise there would be problems here. So actually the movement of fuel, which actually starts from Pathankot upwards, is one of the most Herculean exercises being carried out and by oil companies, and also their stocking and also their transshipment across. See, the passes going to Tangse cross and Ardungla will cross. So this whole exercise has to be done in a time, not only the passes of Zojila and Rohtang, but also the passes that actually support the areas of, say, DBO and the Siachen Glacier. So this is a very major exercise. And you rightly pointed out that we will have about the brigade strength or maybe more in the areas of the subsector north. And it is a Herculean exercise, and we have to build it up, though the river freezes at that time and you are also able to move on the river, drive the vehicles on the river in addition to the bridges which are available. So there is an exercise on, and I think this is one of these most critical times in the lives of 14 Corps.
It indeed is, because when I was crossing the Shok River at the Rinchin Bridge or driving up Depsang all the way to DBO, it's a huge icy desert, and right now it was freezing, in these months. It would be unbearable in November, December and January. But General, we are told that China is also building up on the other side. They are building bunkers, they are building tracks, they are building accommodation. So how tough is it for China and Chinese troops to survive at these altitudes? Or would that be the reason for de-escalation on either side?
Okay, this is a very interesting issue that you have raised. There are about 14-15 roads that come from the Western Highway, which is G219, that come towards the line of actual control, which he has already built it across, right from the areas of Karakoram Pass or to the Depsang Plateau on, and comes on right down to Demchok and Tumar. So he has more road axes available, and then he has also got laterals around. So there is an advantage of road network that he already has. But he doesn't have the habitat of this kind to house two divisions. And there he's not, the troops are not known to have to stay in this kind of tents and this kind of warming arrangement that we have. They are known to have massive generators and the solar power plants to warm their issues. So all this is not an easy task for him to house two divisions in the winter. And these troops won't have seen the kind of bitter winter that one has to go through in that area.
Yes, oh, absolutely. And we'll be watching that very closely. And Abhishek, this time the Border Roads Organization and Army engineers, they are promising that they will keep the passes open as late as possible. And additional snow cutters and snow movers and earth movers are already being brought in, Abhishek.
That's right, Gaurav. Usually, the roads were cut off for 5 to 6 months in this area. What I've learned is that that's been reduced to 120 days. And that's going to be very crucial because that time period, which has come down, allows mobilization of the Indian forces, and with the fuel also being a very crucial factor. What I noticed today was a lot of focus was on huge convoys actually carrying fuel to some of the forward areas. And with this period of 6 months coming down to 120 days, and in time to come perhaps even less than that, this will be very crucial for the Indian forces. Whether this will be possible this winter or not is still not known. But one thing is for sure, that the Indian forces, the BRO, are on a war footing to make sure that road connectivity can be enhanced as much as possible to ensure mobilization to the forward areas even in peak winter.
One thing is very, very clear. General Sharma, many thanks for joining me. Abhishek, many thanks for joining me. One thing is extremely clear, that the LAC is now also going to become like the line of control, where you have troops deployed along multiple peaks. It's also Siachinization of the LAC, with troops deployed between 15,000 and 19,000 feet altitude. Virtually mission impossible. Hats off to our soldiers. Hats off to that entire team that keeps this supply chain going. Because our fighting force, the infantry, the artillery, the armor, they can only be as good as the tail that fetches up with the teeth and keeps them warm and supplied. That is all I have time for on this India First special. Many thanks for watching. News and updates continue on India Today. Stay with us.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.